Sekeres Price for Wednesday, February 28th, 2024, coming to you from the Go-Go Sports Studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. If you're heading into downtown, when I make it for a game, for an event, make it a staycation. Call the Wall, 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sekeres Price rate. Some blackout dates may apply. Matt Sekeres, alongside Jeff Patterson, continues to sit in for Blake Price. Gritty Sassin switches, conducting things with Madison Buckingham. Big show coming up for you, all presented by Applewood Auto Group. We're right now at Applewood Kia Surrey, the 2024 Kia Niro EV and the EV6. You get a complimentary EV charger or complimentary set of winter tires, Jeff, and those would have come in handy yesterday during those snow squalls. I was down in Richmond yesterday. Boy, it was coming down. Pretty good.
Our place in North Van, mid-afternoon. It was a little bit of a whiteout. Fortunately, it didn't stick. I had to come back down for the hockey game, and by the time we were done with the rink wide, roads were fine. It was wet.
Here's what I will say. Saw some of the images from Pemberton and Whistler. Boy, did they need some snow. It has not exactly been a ski season for the ages here, so hope the skiers up there got what they were looking for. Poll question today: has JT Miller proved you wrong? My hand's up. Yes or no? Vote at Sekeres Price on Twitter and YouTube. Get into Miller's game here in a second, Jeff, but answer me the poll. Has he proved you wrong?
On the 100-point front, yes. I thought 99 2 years ago was incredible, and I thought that would be the high water mark, and there was nothing wrong with that. If he was going to be a proven, well-rounded, contribute in all areas, 80-point sort of point-a-game guy for a while, valuable piece. Yep. I didn't think he was going to get to and exceed 100 points after the age of 30. But so on that level, yes, absolutely count me among those.
Prove me wrong on several scores. I hated the trade when it went down, as some continue to remind me. But a guy who was coming off 13 goals, who had work ethic issues under Alain Vigneault in New York, I just, especially at the, where the Canucks were in their competitive or uncompetitive cycle at the time, I thought it was a really big reach and grasp from that administration. But he is more than outdone the trade asset, the first-round pick, sent back Tampa Bay's way. So he's proved me wrong there. Frankly, he's proved me wrong in terms of we have seen him keep that temper in check better. He's become a better two-way hockey player here, particularly under Rick Tocchet as well. And you got to give him credit, because when he showed up here in Vancouver, he said, hey, this is a wake-up call, third organization. I know some things have to change. And he has realized all the vast potential that he had as a first-round pick. And he's turned in to a great Vancouver Canucks. So much so, Jeff, I was just looking at this last night. He is 380 points as a Canuck, 18th on the all-time list. He's 4 back of Alexander Burrows. He's going to pass Burr here in short order, perhaps even next week. Then Boudria, Brendan Morrison, and Ryan Kessler with 393. So he's 13 points away from topping Ryan Kessler's career total here in Vancouver. In fact, if he gets scorching hot between now and the end of the year, he could even pass Don Lever at 407. Now, Pettersson is right now 13th, Lever 12th, JT is 18th, but you could be looking at him in the top 12, top 13 of all-time Canucks scoring.
He's going to pass Pettersson. That's the rate he's going here quickly.
He's 18 back of Pettersson.
That's a different conversation. But, look, I mean, the numbers are there. 380 points in 344 games. And I thought his game against Boston was one of, if not his best games in a Vancouver Canuck uniform. And then he backs it up with another remarkable performance against the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. He is dialed in. He's in a groove. He's feeling it. The confidence he showed to make the move that he did on the goal, but the shot itself basically calls his shot from 40 feet and then just picked his spot and fired it home. I mean, that's a guy that is playing at a level that we just haven't seen from JT Miller.
Yeah, and let's get into our top story then, brought to you by Mr. Lube. JT, the boss, following, as you say, Jeff, that game against Boston, which many picked out as one of his best as a Vancouver Canuck. He's exceptional again against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It comes in an overtime loss, but he has a shorthanded goal, a 2-point night. The crowd is chanting his name. It was one of the best Canucks individual performances of the season. Heck, it had hearkened Ryan Kessler versus Nashville in that playoff series, and just in terms of both ends of the ice, he is so brimming with confidence. You can actually see it shift to shift. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And we'll play it here in a second, but he's getting singled out by his head coach here, Jeff, amongst a group that really I think Rick Tocchet needs more out of, just not JT. You're okay.
Yeah, and I think that's twofold. I think he is praising JT Miller, but in doing so is absolutely putting it at the feet of some others that aren't playing anywhere close to the level that JT Miller is. I will say this, though, still far more impressed with his performance against Boston the other day, because he willed that team from 2 down to victory despite his efforts and his best intentions last night. That game slipped away, and there's no other way to describe it. A 2-0 lead, a 3-2 lead, power plays to start both the second and third periods that could have extended their leads and perhaps put them out of reach. And so, yeah, Miller was good, but not good enough to deliver a victory. And it's not just him, obviously, but I think on Saturday, part of that JT Miller lore was he put the team on his back and got them the 2 points against the Bruins last night. They had to settle for a single.
That's our top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube, 100% Canadian, started by a father and son duo in Edmonton, pioneers of the no appointment oil change and warranty approved oil changes, now providing tile service and sales, no appointment needed. 16 locations in the Lower Mainland. For one near you, go to mrlube.com. Okay, well then let's hear from Rick Tocchet in the clip we just referenced about not closing this hockey game out. And listen to the end, because there's a comment about JT Miller's game at the end.
Well, I just thought there was some sloppy stuff, detailed stuff. There was, some guys looked tired out there, to be honest with you. But it was, even when we're up 3-2 on that, we give them that goal, bad coverage, I didn't think a lot of guys, there's a lot of average guys out there. Millsy drove to play again today. Thought Millsy was great, very, very good today.
So good that the Rogers Arena crowd, inspired by Crazy P, were chanting his name. And I want to get to this. Cody Severson, our colleague at Canucks Army, looking forward to the post-game scrum where someone asked JT Miller what he thought of the chance in the third period, and he responds verbatim, "I didn't hear it, just focused on my game, trying to make smart plays. Guys played well, we got the win." They didn't get the win. But his answer was very much playing dumb. Oh, what do you mean? Farhan Lalji on the question?
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean? Crowd? What? Huh? Oh, I didn't hear it.
Well, let's play the clip here, courtesy of Sportsnet.
Okay.
The win is the most important thing for you, but your game and performance tonight was obviously recognized by the crowd. Nice to be appreciated by them.
Recognized by the crowd?
I like the chanting your name, and you had it going pretty good.
I didn't even hear him, to be honest with you.
Not the greatest audio there, but yes, you catch his drift. Let's hear from JT, because, as mentioned, he was most interested in talking about the team and not himself. And he says this is the next step, closing games like that out.
We did not dominate the second period, I can tell you that. Maybe the last 3-4 minutes, but that's the maturity level that's the next level we're trying to get to as a group, is when we're up 2-0 at home. That should be lockdown point. We don't need 3, 4, 5, and 6 goals at that point. And we let them back into the game and inevitably won the game. So,
concur, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this team this year lock down some low-scoring games, and I kind of thought that when they got the 2-0 lead, they were terrific in the first period. It felt like an extension of the Boston game. They picked up where they left off. You had a Penguins team that played Sunday afternoon at home, flew that night, arrived here like late on their body clocks. They did have a practice on Monday, but still, this is a Pittsburgh team without Jake Gensel, without Brian Rust, 2 of their top 5 players, and they were there for the taking. And it just kind of felt like after the opening period, it slipped through the Canucks' grasp. And so I do agree with JT Miller. That's where I come back to the fact that starting the second and third periods on the power play, I know they got one, but there were circumstances in the game where, man, a power play goal really probably could have put the Penguins away. It didn't happen.
And that's a big advantage, too. You get the fresh ice to start the period when you have the power play to start, plus the chance to rest your best players over the course of the intermission.
And so the second period was kind of strange. Like, Teddy Bluger, what are you doing with a 2-0 lead? Just a dreadful giveaway that invites the Penguins, who really had nothing going, back into the hockey game. Now it's a 2-1 game. Then the penalties, and that's becoming a real story around this hockey club since the All-Star break. 5-on-3, where we heard that before. But then JT scores. He answers the 5-on-3 goal with a shorthanded goal. 29 seconds later, you kind of thought, like, that's going to be the turning point in this hockey game.
That was the willing them to victory like Boston on Saturday night. That was the moment.
Third period, really, I thought, backed off, spent most of the period defending, didn't generate much at all, and then got into some trouble in their own zone. Thatcher Demko lost his stick. Noah Juleson blocks a shot and was basically out of the play, and Lars Eller able to come right down Main Street, tie the game, and then overtime was a carnival. Like, not a well-played overtime by the Vancouver Canucks.
No.
They had the one chance. Boeser got the puck to the net, but Demko was forced to make a bunch of saves. Eventually, the Penguins convert. Garland falls. There's open ice, and Erik Karlsson scores his 8th of the year. So, I mean, for them to get the win against Boston, like, this is 1 win in 6, Matt. They like that. That's a step back.
1 win in 6. It's no question a step back, but we got over the 4-game losing streak. It's 3 out of the last 4 points, if you want to cut it up that way. A lot I want to follow up on with you there. Let's start with penalties. And the Vancouver Canucks give Pittsburgh, 5 power play opportunities. They score on 1. Penalties had been a thing during the 4-game losing streak. I'm of the mind that Tyler Myers, after the Winnipeg game, saying it felt like we were playing both teams, has stuck in the craw of these guys in stripes. I know there's some undisciplined penalties out there that you have to call. Completely understand. There also seems like there have been some really soft calls on the Canucks since that game and since that comment. The Boeser penalty last night, for example.
Look, the game in Minnesota was the one right after the Winnipeg game, and that's where they ran into real penalty problems. There may have been some payback then, perhaps, from the officials. We're a week and a bit out from
but
that
every
now.
crew, Jeff, needs to exact its pound of flesh.
That, and they've got their group text, and I'm sure it all gets around
sure
there.
They do.
But Elias Pettersson takes a penalty early in the third period. Didn't love that one. You know, Zadorov, I mean, that's a trip. He basically slew-foots the guy behind the net. 1 penalty in isolation, fine. 3 seconds into the penalty kill, Myers gets his stick up. That's a high stick. Now you're down 2 men.
Like I said, most of them are legitimate, but there have also been some soft calls on the Canucks, and I do wonder if it stems back to the Winnipeg game and the fuss the Canucks made in the postgame, particularly Myers saying it felt like we played both teams, because that's sort of one of those lines you don't cross.
I guess what I'm
when
surprised
you infer that the referees were on a certain club side.
I'm surprised at just the gap now between the Canucks and the next closest team in terms of number of penalties taken, number of times shorthanded. So since the All-Star break, 12 games for the Canucks. Not every other team has played 12. Canucks lead the NHL in minor penalties taken at 51. Calgary's next at 43. So
that's a very
from 1
big
to
gap.
2.
Yeah.
And the number of times shorthanded, Canucks at 45, Tampa at 39. Again,
So another gap.
a sizable gap.
On Bluger. Are we beginning to think that Teddy Bluger, Connor Garland, and Dakota Joshua just need each other? And when they're split up, they are just not as effective, that they have unique chemistry as a trio, or at least Pius Suter or Teddy Bluger have unique chemistry centering Joshua and Garland? Because I can understand what he was trying to do with this line blender and shuffling things up, but I do wonder whether now you have got multiple lines struggling, and particularly the one that was the most bedrock, that third line, even without with Bluger or earlier in the season when Suter was there.
So the fourth line last night, there was some really promising and encouraging signs. The shot share 18-2 in the Canucks' favor. Like, they spent all night in the offensive zone except for the one shift there early in the second, and that's just a dreadful giveaway from a guy that generally doesn't turn the puck over, is pretty safe when he's got the puck on his stick. Now, offense has completely vanished from Teddy Bluger's game. In a fourth line role, not as big a deal, but when he's out there with Phil DiGiuseppe on one side and Sam Lafferty, and they created the one chance in the second period where Lafferty had the shot from the slot that got between the pads of Tristan Jarry, and somehow he was able to seal it off. I thought that one was going to sneak through. It didn't. But just looking back through my notes now, like, Phil DiGiuseppe was so good coming out of training camp, earned that spot higher in the lineup, but he looks lost right now. And this is where, again, I just, my gut tells me that they're not going to go to the playoffs with the fourth line as constructed. Now, when Dakota Joshua gets back, we'll see where the dominoes all fall here. Phil DiGiuseppe has not scored against an NHL goaltender since a 5-0 win against St. Louis on October 27th. He has an empty net goal since then. Yeah. He's not there to score a ton. I get that. But, he's not the most physical guy. He doesn't put people through the boards and into row 5. He wins his share of board battles. Now, again, territorially last night.
First month of the season, he won every board battle.
Yeah.
He basically needs to win a lion's share of board battles to be an effective player. Sorry.
No, I just, he's not an intimidating presence out there. I don't think teams fear when Phil DiGiuseppe, here comes PDG. They're not game planning for him, certainly. And I do think Sam Lafferty's game has fallen off, too, where there are long stretches. His speed is noticeable, but the Leafs picked him up for a playoff run last year, and that didn't go so well either. And so, again, as we tick towards the trade deadline, I do wonder if that's part of the wish list here of the Vancouver Canucks, is to change the DNA of that fourth line, because Nils Hoglander's the extra forward. Well, there's not a lot in his game these days either. And so I'm kind of curious to see where things go there. But the real problem last night, as we talk about the bottom six, it was that third line. Elias Lindholm, Connor Garland, and Arshdeep Bains. Matt, the shot attempts at even strength were 14-3 in the Penguins' favor. Shots on goal, 9-0.
Yes.
And they weren't matched up against Sidney Crosby. Elias Lindholm's most frequent competitors on the other side last night, Evgeny Malkin, Lars Eller, and Jesse Puljujärvi. So it wasn't like they were hard matched against Sid.
We talked about Lindholm yesterday.
I think we're going to be talking about him a lot here.
Do you?
I do.
5-5-1 since the trade. You foresee more trouble here?
Oh,
do you think he's going to integrate? Do you think he's going to find the chemist?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think they're really searching and struggling. And it didn't work with Pettersson, so they've given him a line of his own. And that line with Garland on it has spent so much time in the offensive zone this season, but kind of oil and water. Like there just wasn't a mesh with those two guys last night.
For everybody who said, don't make a big trade like that and screw up chemistry, we got a good thing going on. Are they vindicated and validated here?
It's 12 games, and it's about getting this guy up and running to be a force and a difference maker come playoff time. You make your move early so that there is additional lead-up time here. I don't think he screwed up the Canucks chemistry. Like, I'm not putting that at his feet. He just hasn't found a fit. They haven't been able to find a fit with him. I expected more. I did. This is a guy that's,
I mean, he's got 21 left, so a lot can change in that time.
But he can't have many nights like last night where he just gets absolutely crushed.
You want to see him you want to see him playing with Pettersson, though, and not being a center.
I made my point yesterday that I just think it was a lot to give up if ultimately he's a third line center.
On Bains, and look, he got a late shift in a close game. He spent some time in Elias Pettersson's old power play spot. It has been an extraordinary rise up the lineup, with Rick Tocchet throwing all sorts of accolades at him that you just don't typically hear a head coach in the NHL dropping at the feet of a young player on such a small sample size. I thought that might have been the worst of his games in the NHL last night.
Yeah, I think it's been a steady sort of
And I like some
four-game
of the
decline,
things that
but-
he's doing out there, but at some point there's got to be a bottom line, or at some point, at the very least, you can't be, as you say, caved in on the shot and chance attempts,
Yeah.
as that line was last night.
And certainly I look to the veterans on that line more than the rookie playing his fourth game in the NHL. But again, we point out that it wasn't a hard match against the Penguins' top line. And Evgeny Malkin looks like the end is very near for him. It just looks laborious for him to get around the ice. Yeah, I mean, that first game in Colorado, he was noticeable, certainly from the hash marks down, the board battles that he won, setting up Teddy Bluger a couple of times against the Avs. We really haven't seen a lot of that. And so I would agree with you that in terms of his effectiveness, I think it has sort of been in decline since the first game. And Rick Tocchet said as much after the first one. He said, like, now he's got a baseline. Can he stay at a level?
Oh, the first game you play on our training, you're not skating, you're levitating
Yep.
out there.
So look,
right?
I'm not burying this guy at all. I love
nobody
the
is
story,
doing that.
and I think that there's some utility there, but they're still trying to figure a path forward with Elias Lindholm. Is Baines the right guy for that line? We still don't know when Dakota Joshua is getting back. Hopefully soon, because they miss him. There's no doubt about that. But you're right. I mean, you can't spin your wheels at the NHL level forever. It's the best league in the world. And so there does have to be some tangible takeaways here at some point.
And I do wonder, with all the spots and line mates they've tried him with already, whether some of this falls on the coaching staff as well, and maybe just put him in a spot and let him learn the two guys that he's going to play with and get a better book, because he's figuring out everything. He's learning everything about the NHL right now. Speaking of young players whose development is not always linear, right? Nils Hoglander, his 200th National Hockey League game. I saw you tweet he's the 7th player from his draft class to do that, and that's a second-round pick. That's
only guy outside the top 10 of that draft class, too.
Well, and that's the way it typically goes. Like, you get top 10 picks who play early.
Yep.
You don't get a lot of second-round picks who play early. That was the gift of Nils Hoglander a few years ago. He, before obviously taking a step back and finishing last year in the minors, he got some power play time, despite not being on that unit at morning skate. He scored a goal, which is great. He's also culpable on the 3-3 goal alongside several other teammates. Where are you on Hoglander right now in his best fit?
Love the shift that led to his goal. He had a great chance, didn't score.
I thought he was their best player in the first
stuck
period.
with it.
Mhm.
And if you watch the goal, he gets inside position on Sidney Crosby. And so put himself in a spot where second time around was able to cash in 18 goals, all of them at even strength. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with power play at morning skate. Tyler Myers, and we all kind of thought there's no way Tyler Myers is going to be out there on the power play. And sure enough, he was replaced by Nils Hoglander. So some power play time there. The Canucks had two first period power plays. They scored on their second with the Boeser goal, but there are two ends of the ice, and we know that that's been the Achilles heel for Nils Hoglander. And we talked about the fact that there was a sequence there. Demko loses his stick. Juleson is in some distress, and Hoglander gets caught puck watching. Rick Tocchet said after the game he wanted to force him to the one side of the ice. Instead, Eller was able to go where he wanted to go and then use the screen in front of Demko, and the fact that the goalie didn't have a stick scores to tie it. So that was Hoglander, that was Pettersson, that was Mikheyev. They were out there as the forward line, and if they're, they opened the scoring, so you can't sit here and say they didn't contribute, but in a 3-2 lead in the third period, that's where Rick Tocchet wants to be able to trust young players like Hoglander that they're going to make the right reads. Always talks about the guts of the ice, Matt. They didn't take the guts of the ice away, and the Penguins made them pay.
Speaking of the power play, because I know you feel like this didn't necessarily get the treatment it deserved and the coverage it deserved, but when Rick Tocchet said a couple of days back with regards to the blending of the power play units, the changes that we saw and saw last night, sometimes, quote, you need a breather from each other. He went on to say they liked the look of these blended power play units from the morning skate, but sometimes you need a breather from each other. That's an interesting comment.
It is. And then look who was split.
Right. Pettersson and Miller.
Yeah. People love to dump all over us for trying to stir things up. The coach didn't name names, but the proof is there in the pudding. Look who needed a breather from each other. This is the head coach at a podium,
Jeff,
saying that.
How specific is Elias with the type of players he wants to play with? Because
I think
I've
remarkably particular.
Yeah, I think so as well. Boudreau made some coy comments last year about playing him with, guys who he's friends with or who he enjoys their company
to
or
the
hangs
point,
out with.
I wonder when we all remark, Tyler Myers, what's he doing out there on the power play? I wonder if Elias Pettersson said, what's he doing out there on the power play? His buddy is Hoglander. His buddy has 18 goals now, more of a potential goal scorer on the power play than Tyler Myers, certainly. But I just thought that was a really curious comment from a coach of a first place overall team, talking about sometimes guys need a breather from each other.
Look, we know Pettersson and Miller aren't the best of buddies, not exactly two personalities that mesh. Don't have to be. There are plenty of examples of guys who didn't necessarily get along or weren't best buddies off the ice coming together and creating beautiful hockey together or in conjunction. So the bigger question to me is, can Miller and Pettersson coexist long term with the hockey club? Because the other thing that's at play here is, you think Miller is one of the guys who went to Tocchet and said, "Hey, our Steve, I'll take him on my line."
Yeah. That's my understanding.
That, liked the cut of his jib, thought, okay, let's see what this kid has, and I'm happy to have him on my line, coach. If that's playing out and you got Elias being particular about who he plays with, and look, it's not like he's dictating or anything like that. Obviously, Ilya Mikheyev wouldn't have spent as much time as Ilya Mikheyev has spent on his wing. But if you were to tell me that not having winger fits for Elias Pettersson is one of the reasons why this continues to drag on and stalemate, impassive negotiations, and let's see after the season, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Okay, moving on. Pierre LeBrun of TSN reporting that the Dallas Stars are the front runners for Chris Tanev, the ex-Canucks defenseman currently with Calgary. He reports that the reason why a trade isn't done with Dallas is because Dallas has told Calgary, we are not trading a first-round pick. Although the way they draft second and third and fourth round picks may be Stankoven with another performance last. So he lists, LeBrun does, the Canucks, Leafs, and Oilers. So 3 Canadian suitors there, and Dallas, and the Stars and Jim Nill holding out, not willing to part with that first round pick, which begs the question for me, Jeff, because we've been hearing this for a couple weeks now. A lot of teams offering, a collection of picks to Calgary for Chris Tanev. Does a second round pick and a prospect get it done? Well, obviously it doesn't get it done right now. Might it get it done a little closer to next Friday in the NHL trade deadline? The 2025 first overall or for first round pick of the Vancouver Canucks. Would you move that for Tanev if that's what gets the deal done right now?
As much respect as I have for Chris Tanev as a person and a player, and I see a fit here, but I have trouble. There's just in the pit of my stomach, a first rounder at this stage of his career, and knowing the way that he plays, and that's what you love about him. But with every shot block comes the chance that your investment in this player, you may not have him around for the playoffs. Now, you can't go into any trade thinking that way. The other thing, too, is, I'd have to go back through. Can you recall where two teams in the same division have hooked up on 3 significant trades in the same season?
No, I can't.
Zadorov deal, that was the prelude, Lindholm, and now we'll see what happens here with Chris Tanev. But look, I think the Flames are playing this one right. It's a bit of a slow play. We're in the game of chicken now, and there are 10 days to go. I think somebody will give the Flames what they're looking for. I think some team will pony up a first rounder.
You almost get to the question, who's more puck committed? Is it Edmonton needing to realize the talent of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl with at least a finals appearance, if not a cup victory? Is it Toronto, who you look around and are getting to the end of their window, right, with the age of some of their players, Sean Tavares, Morgan Riley, a lot of miles on that body. The Canucks are probably fourth on the list, Jeff, in terms of pot-committed teams, even after making the Lindholm deal, which was a significant all-in, lowercase a, lowercase I move. Dallas has been a team that has perennially been in the playoffs, although they've got enough youth on that team. Maybe they've got a longer runway here of competitiveness than some of those other teams. But yeah, I agree with you. If I had to put $1 down now on whether Chris Tanev will be a Canuck or on one of these other teams by the deadline, I would put it down on one of these other teams.
Chris Tanev would be young on Dallas. They've got Pavelski, they've got Ryan Suter, they've got Jamie Benn. He'd be like a spring chicken on that Dallas hockey club. I will say,
except for the core is all young.
I know
guys. I hear what you're saying.
The Oilers are interesting because they went out and they got Mattias Ekholm, great trade, great player, and that pairing with Bouchard, like that's a top-notch pairing by any measure in the National Hockey League. I'm just not a fan of Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci, and I think they were exposed last year, and I don't know that the Oilers want to go back down that road again, so I could see a fit with Chris Tanev coming in and playing the right side there. But I say that, and then I watch the Vancouver Canucks, and you've got Hughes and Hronek, and the Canucks seem intent on sticking with that pair. You know, Ian Cole and Tyler Myers right now is your second pairing. And I know Carson Soucy comes back, but remember the jury was still out when they signed Carson Soucy. We all said, great third pairing guy.
Right.
Is there more there? Now we're talking about them needing Cody Ceci basically to be their third best defenseman. That's a big jump for a guy that hasn't played a lot this year.
The fourth period reporting, I think you meant Ian Cole, fourth period reporting significant LA Kings interest in wingers. You mentioned it yesterday. Adrian Kempe hurt. Sounds like it's going to be a lengthy absence for Kempe. Also means the Kings are going to get handed some cap space here with LTIR. LA already missing Victor Arvidsson, Carl Grundstrom, who are both on LTIR. So with a Kings team that is sitting on a wild card, the pressure is mounting there on Rob Blake, who has already fired a head coach, to add some reinforcements to a lineup that could use it. Tyler Toffoli, the ex-Vancouver Canuck. There is extension talks in New Jersey, according to TSN's insider trading. Although New Jersey's a very interesting test case right now. Are they a playoff team? Are they not a playoff team? Are they going to try to be a playoff team? Are they just going to pack it in for this year? They've been connected to UC Saros, the goaltender in Nashville. They've been connected to Jacob Markstrom, the ex-Canuck, the goaltender in Calgary. So we'll see if Toffoli extends or if he's going to be a deadline addition yet again. We all remember him here in Vancouver, and he was pretty darn good for the Canucks after they brought him over. Which brings me, Jeff, to an emerging story, and that is the gaps in the wild card race, or an emerged story at this point. Calgary, Seattle, Minnesota, St. Louis. Are they free to be sellers now? They're all between 5 and 7 points back of the last wild card. There are now two distinctive gaps of 5 points in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference wild card races. So are we going to see this buyer's market that some of us thought was in the offing? Devils, 5 back of Tampa in the East. 2 games in hand, but 5 back of Tampa in the East, who's sitting on the last playoff spot. Nashville with their 6-game winning streak. 5 up on Calgary, who's won 4 in a row, but they're still 5 back, only with a game in hand. So Calgary, St. Louis, Minnesota, Seattle, and then in the East, Jersey, Washington, Pittsburgh, despite the win last night, and the Islanders. Are we going to see the floodgates open with these teams on the outside looking in and looking to get something for their UFA rentals.
Well, it's funny the way the schedule works because Pittsburgh making its way through the West. They've won 3 in a row after their win over the Canucks. They're going to face Calgary here. Both of those teams can't win, and it sort of feels like both are waiting for a tipping point and a sign that their season is effectively over. But you're right. The Calgary Flames won 4 in a row all of a sudden. And so at the very least, they're hanging around. By the same measure, and we'll get to our best bets here coming up, but Minnesota plays Nashville tomorrow. That feels like the last stand for the Minnesota Wild. If they lose that one, then they are effectively flushing on their season. So, yeah, like,
I thought that night was at hand for Pittsburgh. 2-0, and Ferraro said on the TV side the Penguins look like they're going to have trouble keeping up tonight. And I thought, boy, if Pittsburgh loses this game, forget about it. Now it's time to sell. Wouldn't be surprised to see a Gensel trade. Wouldn't be surprised to see other parts move from Pittsburgh. But the win maybe extends their life.
Well, we're just over a week out from the trade deadline. It kind of feels like a lot of teams will circle the wagons this weekend, bring their staff in, get the war rooms established, all those types of things. And there's usually a little bit of a calm before the storm. But I think we're going to see some teams jump. I think we'll see some teams punt.
Absolutely.
And we'll see other teams obviously jump ahead. It's not going to go down to the wire.
Calgary has to do something with Hanifin. He's not re-signing there. He's too good a player not to trade. It's a difficult trade to make because a lot of teams are looking at it going, he's not going to resign here. He wants to resign with Tampa, or we don't have the cap space to even consider re-signing him. He's in some cases, a difficult cap fit right now for certain teams. So it's not an easy trade to make for Craig Conroy, but I think that's a domino that is absolutely going to drop.
Sure. And if that one does, and we expect that it will, then the Tanev one has to as well, right? Like they're sort of all in, I think, at that point, whenever they decide to start to make their moves.
The question is, does a Markstrom domino also drop? Like, is this the total remaking of the Calgary Flames
it's been
over the next week
since we've seen a goalie of that stature move at the deadline?
Well, and
you see backups and spare parts, but
and you occasionally see an off-season trade of
a guy with term and a guy who is having a fine season in Calgary. They just don't score a lot for him. That's been part of the problem.
Maybe Ryan Miller. You may have to go back to Ryan Miller going to St. Louis in terms of the last time a goalie of that caliber was moved.
Perhaps.
Moved at the deadline. But Calgary, who's already, as you know, Jeff, made the 2 trades with Vancouver to add the couple of draft picks with by parting with Zadorov, and then Kuzmenko, Brestevich, the first-round pick, certainly, and the other nickels and dimes on that trade. And that could be just the start. Like the big refashioning of the Calgary Flames could be right before our eyes over the next 9 days before NHL trade deadline. All right, let's get to our menu today. It is brought to you by Greta. Boy, did we have a fantastic time last Thursday at Greta Bar. Awesome place to watch the game. Terrific spirit, terrific energy. It's a quick walk to the Rinker Stadium. Stadium gets going this weekend with soccer. It's a go-to spot for food and drink, fun before the game, after the game. Make it a game night at Greta, 50 West Cordova, or at gretabar.com. We'll talk to Frank Corrado here. We'll talk to him about JT Miller. He's a former defense partner of Ian Cole. We're going to talk to him about that. The fit of Elias Lindholm positionally. Frank's going to put his X's and O's cap on for us there. Quinn Hughes has struggled a little bit here of late. We get into that. Both our guests today, Frank Corrado and Harman Dial, we're asking them for a trade deadline wish list guy, a guy that, you know, is attainable given the parameters, given where the Canucks are cap-wise and everything, that they would like to see added before next week. We'll do some hashtags, the best and worst of Twitter, including a Canucks prospect continuing to tear up a European league. Harm Dial will stop by. JT Miller, trade deadline wish, Lindholm, Archie Baines. Great answer from Harm with regards to some of the penalties that the Vancouver Canucks are taking here and what accounts for that. And really sad note later in the show on the passing of a recent BC Lion at far too young an age. Okay, sports interaction, best bets, JPat. We went golf yesterday. Where are you going today?
A heavyweight showdown in the Central Division of the National Hockey League. Doesn't get a whole lot better than this on the final day of February. This game coming up on Thursday. Winnipeg at Dallas. They are tied on 79 points, 2 ahead of the Colorado Avalanche. The Jets are the underdog on the road here.
Oh,
But they've won 4 in a row, 7-3 in their last 10. I see some value there with the Winnipeg Jets. So I'm taking the Jets. They're paying out at 215.
250, not bad. I thought you were going to tell me they were an underdog at home, and Mark Chipman was going to bellyache about that as well. Call a news conference, call the commissioner into town. What's the matter? No one's giving us any respect. I'm going back to a futures with the Vancouver Canucks. 1 win in 6. But was that sort of their slump this year? 3 out of 4 the last 4 points. If they can continue to manage losses and win their fair share, they're going to be battling for first overall at the end of the year. They're still just the 5th choice to win the President's Trophy. They're behind Florida, the Rangers, Winnipeg, and Boston. You get them at 7-1. There's a little bit of value there. So Canucks on the President's Trophy. My Sports Interaction best bet. Sports Interaction, your homegrown sportsbook and casino featuring custom props and parlays you're not going to find anywhere else, plus a best-in-class casino with thousands of games, live dealers. Those of you on YouTube, you can scan the code right now, get a 200% welcome bonus from Sekeres Price. Sports Interaction, bet local, must be 19 years of age. Please play responsibly. Frank Corrado is next. Park is the official casino resort of the Vancouver Canucks, and Sekeres Price, we're heading there. Yeah, March 13th. Join us for a live show at BC Kitchen in advance of the game against Colorado. You get 15% off the game day menu at BC Kitchen with a game ticket, $6 happy hour specials at Center Bar Park, just steps away from Rogers Arena. We'll see you on March 13th.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. With TSN hockey analyst and former Vancouver Canuck Frank Corrado. Frankie, did you ever have to submit to the relentless questioning of JPat in a post game?
I think JPat always took it easy on me. I don't think there was ever anything that I did that was like you expected more out of me. I think you expected the bare minimum, and sometimes you may have gotten it.
And you delivered on and off the ice. So
yeah,
that's
I think
why we loved you. Yeah.
John Shorthouse had a great quote one time where he's like, "You are going to give us your 1 goal a year, and it's okay, and you're good for your 1 goal." So, thanks, Shorty.
And that's when Shorty gets to say, it's been 57 games since Corrado scored back in October against it.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you ever on the do something list?
I'm not sure the do something list existed.
Yeah.
Back in Frankie's
You may
time
predate
here
the
in
do
Vancouver,
something
so.
list. Anyways, Canucks were doing something last night against the Penguins. Pretty good game. Not sure how much you caught of it, Frank, but JT Miller right now. Wow. Unbelievable hockey he's playing. Yeah. And the thing is his confidence is visible. You can see it on the ice. He's trying things and getting to places that an unconfident guy lacking confidence wouldn't get to. What have been your observations about JT against Boston and Pittsburgh this week?
I think you hit the nail on the head there. And just like, it's very telling when Rick Tocchet has a post-game kind of presser and he talks about the team, and it might not be the most positive towards where Miller's game is at, where Tocchet thinks it's at. And I just think like it's just been this build all season long where he came into the season with this little bit of a, I want to prove it to myself. I want to prove it to everyone else that I can play against top lines. I'm not the guy that they showed on Saturday night last year, doing the straight leg back check kind of stuff. And like it just seems like he's taken everything personal in the right way, though. You can take things personal and suck out about it. And there's players in the league, one in California that does that a little too much these days, wearing number 80. But I just think, like, for JT Miller, he's first on the puck. And if he's not first on the puck, he's winning a battle. And he's in a lot of the right spots on the ice. It's so important to, like, not to just get to the spots, but get to the spots on time. Like, move your feet away from the puck, which I think he's doing a much better job of. And it's so important. And the more you move off the puck, the more you're going to have the puck. And, like, the confidence is a real thing. Like, last night on that breakaway, you could tell, like, it's head up. And that's a shot with some conviction. Takes a second before he wants to shoot that. That wasn't just, I got to get this shot off. That was, precise, accurate, like a sniper in the Army. Like that's what it felt like. And his game's been good all year long, but it's been really good lately.
And what I love about it as well, Frankie, is when they need him most. Like, they blow a 2-goal lead. It is 2-2 Pittsburgh, and here's JT answering shortly thereafter, reestablishing the lead. Tell us what it's like on the bench when you have that guy who's basically saying, no, not on my watch.
Like, it's funny because, so I played a little bit with Pittsburgh, and of course they're the team that's in there last night. And I can recall my very first game with them. We're playing in Buffalo, and we're getting caved in the first period, to the point where, like, Mike Sullivan's coming down the bench and he's looking at guys and he's like, are we effing kidding ourselves here? Like, what are we doing? Right. And we get a power play late in that first period. Sure enough, Crosby goes end to end and does the one-handed goal. Like, you've seen it a million times on the highlight reels. It's the one-handed backhand goal. And I remember the bench just being like, oh, what a relief. And I looked at my D partner, was Ian Cole, that game. And he looks at me, he goes, that's just Sid, man. That's what he does. And there was like a belief in the group there that it's like, all right, there's a guy on your team that maybe when things aren't going well, he's going to bring it, and he can find a moment like that. And for Miller to have that moment last night, it's obviously, it's great, it's important, but now Vancouver's in the point where you look at a small situation like that and you think, what does that mean come playoff time? Like, does that mean they're going to be playing against Vegas, or they're going to be playing against Edmonton, and it's going to be, McDavid's hemming you in your own zone, or Vegas is rolling all four lines? Can there be that guy that can find something for you like that? And I think it's a testament to where the Canucks are, where they've put themselves this year, that we can start having those conversations about the team, and not just, hey, JT Miller's played really well. Do you think we can get a team around him next year that can help out? No, now it's like, okay, can that come in handy come playoff time? Because that's right around the corner, and everything you're doing right now, from an individual point of view, from a team point of view, is to get ready for that moment. And maybe that's something that he can provide come playoff time.
I'm glad you brought up Tocchet and the name checking of Miller, because it, as a one-off maybe, but this is 2 or 3 times in the last little while. They have one win in their last 6 games here. This isn't by accident. And so I read it the same way you did, that while he's not wrong in, praising JT Miller, but it feels like an appeal to a handful of others. And I think we know where the list starts. Are you surprised at all that as JT has dug in here and brought his game to another level, that it hasn't sort of inspired some of his teammates along the way? I mean, JT can't do it all by himself. It's pretty clear with the fact they have one win in their last 6 hockey games.
I know. It's interesting. Like, you can be inspired as much as you want. Sometimes you just don't have it. And that's probably the case for a few guys right now. And it's hard not to think about, like, the absence of Dakota Joshua right now in the lineup, and what that third line was doing for the team. Like, I felt like that line was facilitating so much for the group. And, like, and we talked about this previously, where that line would go on the ice and right away they're in the offensive zone. They didn't spend a lot of time playing in that murky gray area where nothing was happening. And so now you lose that element, And now there's other players that don't get the benefit of that setup line. And I think we're seeing that a little bit, and it's carried over into other elements like, the power play has been a little bit of a mishmash. And I know the power play gets one last night with the 2 balanced units, but that's weird. That's unorthodox. Like it's got an odd look to it. And I think at 5-on-5, the same can be said for a few players right now where it's like, okay, Miller's really going. Is there some guys that need to kind of follow suit? Yes, it probably happens sooner rather than later. But it is a little bit of a stretch here where you have some individuals giving you really good performances, and you have some that aren't quite where they were earlier in the year. And like we just talked about with Miller, it's okay for now. Still first place in the division, still first place in the NHL. You just think about, okay, are we going to get this team peaking at the right time? Is everyone's game going to come around when you need it most? And that's the most important thing, is working towards that point.
Well, one guy whose game hasn't come around yet is Elias Lindholm. They paid a pretty package to get this guy from Calgary. Frank, you have moved NHL teams. You've picked up your life and moved to other cities. I cut him some slack. I mean, 8 of his first 10 were out on the road, the All-Star weekend. Like, there's been a lot going on in his life. I get that. But this guy is a quality National Hockey Leaguer. We know that. Scores 2 in his debut. He had the other 2-goal game, but last night got absolutely caved on his line with Connor Garland and Arshdeep Bains. How long can we give him this out of he's a newcomer, he's adjusting, he's still finding his way? And at what point is it just go time and be a little more effective?
Well, I think criticism is always going to be valid. There's no player that's above the criticism. With as far as the team goes, he's here now. Like he's playing. So, whether he has a great night the next game or a week from now or 2 weeks from now, that's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things because of what you acquired him for. Like, you acquired him for the playoffs, and that's always going to be the bigger picture, the end goal in mind when we think about his game. But with that being said, you can't just flip a switch. Like, it's almost disrespectful to the league and the integrity of the league to think that you can show up come playoff time, haven't played your best hockey, and say, yeah, I'm just going to turn it on now. Like, I'm really built for this moment. No, it doesn't work that way. Like, the saying confidence is earned? Like, you can say you have confidence for sure. But if you don't build it, and we've talked about this a lot, if you don't build that little highlight reel in your head where you've made the good plays, you've won the face-offs at critical moments, you've scored a few goals, like you've been on the right side of the puck defensively. If you don't have that, you haven't earned the confidence as much as you tell yourself in your head that you're a confident player. So that's going to be the challenge for him. But he's got time. He's got the skills. He's got the ability. He's just got to do it. And it was interesting, like even going back to that Seattle game, like, did we ever get an explanation as to why, like, Lindholm was on the first power play unit, then Boeser was on it, then it was a little bit like mixing those two around on the power play. Now you got 2 spread units.
Yeah. Talk had said earlier in the week that sometimes guys need a breather from each other. I mean, the power play was 1 for 29, so I think he was experimenting,
just
some
chucking stuff at the wall.
Frankie,
well, it was just weird in game because it was in game and it was like there's Lindholm, then there's a face-off, and there's Boeser, and I don't know. It's
Hronek started on the power play that night, and then by the 4th power play,
well,
he was out of there.
Last night, there were moving parts on the power play. Hoglander didn't see any morning skate power play, right? And he was, anyways. Tocchet has said he's the center, Lindholm. So, we thought he'd be a great fit when the trade was made, both as a power play guy and as an offensive player who doesn't demand the puck. He's happy to be the guy off the puck. And we thought, okay, with him and Pettersson, that could make a really good fit here. Is it a positional thing, Frank? Like, are you concerned about where he fits positionally? Because Jeff's point yesterday was that's a hell of a lot to give up for a third line center if you're going to stack him at center below Pettersson and Miller.
I always thought he was a center. I always see him in that regard. And yeah, if you're going to have Miller, Pettersson, Lindholm, you're deep down the middle, but like we've talked about in the past, that third line is really good. So at some point, Joshua's coming back. And I would imagine, because I would do this, as soon as that is available to you to have that third line fully intact, I want to see that. I want that like yesterday. So he's not going to be your third line center. So he probably has to be. Are you going to push Pettersson to the wing? Are you going to push him like Lindholm on the wing? Like that's the question now. And like,
well, who would you prefer, Frank? Who would you prefer seeing in the middle between Pettersson and Lindholm?
I would prefer Pettersson in the middle of the ice. I just think he's a more natural fit. Like for me, he's more of a distributor. I think like the way Pettersson can carry the puck up the ice and kind of weave his way through. I want him in the middle of the ice. I don't want him sequestered to the wall. I think like Lindholm is not as dynamic as Pettersson. So I think I would want Pettersson in the middle of the ice. But now you're taking Lindholm out of his comfort zone, let's say. But the thing is, you're still gonna play with good players regardless. So you should be able to, to be comfortable in that situation. And as far as faceoffs go, you'll probably take faceoffs when you're on your strong side. So in that moment, when you're off a faceoff, you will be the centerman until you make a switch. And a lot of the times, like the first player back into the defensive zone, that guy's playing center. It's not necessarily the natural centerman. So until there's a switch, that's your responsibility to be the low forward. So there are going to be moments in a game where you are assuming the role of a centerman. So it's not so cut and dry that winger, you just stay on the wall and you're up and down and it's a straight line game. There is a little bit of nuance. There's a little bit of gray area. He will find himself in that position, but it's not going to be like, he's not a third line center. And as much as maybe you'd be really deep of a team if he was, it's preventing one of your most effective lines when Joshua comes back from playing together. And I don't think that's conducive for the team.
Look, he has 70 points. The Canucks are first in the overall standings. He's got the inside track for the Norris Trophy. Like, this is not me throwing darts at Quinn Hughes in any way, but as a guy that played that position, like, I don't think his game has been as dynamic since the All-Star break as it was earlier in the season. My question to you is, like, how hard is it in the best league in the world to play 26, 28 minutes a night and keep your game up there all year long?
Well, it's not even that. It is that. Think about how often he has the puck. Like, for a player like that who has the puck that much on his stick, who has the puck in the offensive zone as much as he does, and it's just there's going to be things that happen when you have the puck that often. It's not always going to be smooth. If you're a guy that doesn't have the puck like me, like when I played, all right, I'm out for a skate and I'm a guy and I just don't want to mess up. And if I played my 15 minutes and nothing happened, high event, that was a good night for me. It's not the case for him. It's high event and it's great when it is because he's so good at driving offense from the back end. But that is part of it. Like there's a mental grind aspect behind knowing for us to be successful, for me to be successful, I'm going to have to make a lot of plays. I'm going to have the puck a lot on my stick, and everyone's gunning for you. Everyone knows, like, you're the one, you're shifty and you're spinning off guys and everyone gets a book on you. With that being said, it has still been an incredible season. And he's still been like uber talented at so many different elements of the game. And he set the bar so high this season with his play that even if it comes down, a couple notches, you still have to look at it and say, that's pretty damn good. But you kind of know what it can be. And I think that's, we're at the point in the season here where between the All-Star break and the trade deadline, people talk about the dog days. This is another, portion of those dog days where, once the trade deadline hits, there's going to be a little rejuvenation here with the group as far as maybe we made a move or, the GM came in and talked to us and gave us this great speech about how he really believes in our group. And that's around the corner. But right now there's, this is a grind portion of the season for everyone.
Your old partner, Ian Cole, the aforementioned Ian Cole, he was playing 21 minutes a night for the Canucks earlier in the season. Nikita Zadorov gets acquired. Noah Juleson shows himself to be a little more dependable, and those minutes are down now, Frank. He's in the 17, 18-minute range. How much should he be playing the rest of the way? Because he's already been given sort of a maintenance game, if you will, where they moved Juleson in.
And I think if Susie had been healthy, there would have been a little bit more of that somewhere along the line.
But Susie hasn't been able to stay healthy, and so Ian Cole's playing all these minutes. How worried would you be about that going down the stretch and into the playoffs?
Just turned 35 earlier in the month.
Yeah. What's the sweet spot, you think?
I always felt that if you were a guy that maybe played a little bit of special teams, but you played your regular shift at 5-on-5 on the back end, you're probably, depending on the game and the whistles, you're somewhere between 16 to 19, let's say. So I think he's like in a good wheelhouse as far as his time. Like last night, he was 17:53. Like I think that's pretty comfortable. You can get through, 28 shifts pretty well as a guy like that. And another thing for a player like him who's been around a long time, there's probably not going to be a lot of like wasted effort, wasted skating. You know, if you're a younger guy and you're trying to figure out your cadence and your pacing and adjusting to more minutes, less minutes, sometimes you can waste a little bit of energy. But I feel like for him, if he's been playing, these kinds of minutes, maybe not as much in Tampa Bay, but when he was in Pittsburgh, like that seemed to be like a regular occurrence for him. That seemed to be a little bit of a sweet spot. It's like, how to play that kind of game. You've played it a million times. You know how quickly you need to get to certain spots on the ice. So I don't really see any concern with it. If it starts to get into the 20, 21, 22, I would say that's probably a little too much. But under 20, between 16 to 19, I think that's a good spot for him. Like, he gives you something. Like he's dependable. He's dependable, and he's somewhat underrated with his puck moving ability. He's not just a tree stump back there.
And I think he probably gives you as much off the ice as he gives you on the ice as well, from what we've been able to observe of Ian Cole. Okay, last question here. Who would you most like to see as a Vancouver Canuck between now and trade deadline? All the guys that are out there and available, Frankie.
All the guys that
Pick
are out there.
Pick one that you think's a great fit for the Canucks that you would be excited about that trade.
Okay, I'm just taking a look at our TSN trade bait list. Trade Center, March 8th on TSN.
Oh, look at that. What a pro.
Really?
How's that for a tease?
They're covering trade deadline this year.
And I'll say this, Duthie's got to be getting excited here. We're 9 days away and really not a lot of big fish outside of Lindholm and Monahan.
Don't jinx it for Duthie. Please do not jinx it for him. Who's one player? Now, we're just no cap,
Well, within reason.
Within reason.
Of course, yeah.
Oh, man. I just, like, Tyler Toffoli screams clutch goals to me, doesn't he? Like, he was so clutch for Montreal. He's scoring at 5-on-5 this year. He's got a lot of goals, and a lot of them are 5-on-5 goals. Like, isn't that a name, like a scoring winger that you could kind of get behind? And like Ilya Mikheyev has struggled to score goals, and he's playing lower in the lineup. And I know, like, he's got the speed and all that kind of stuff, but I see Tyler Toffoli, and I think of a guy similar to how we just talked about with JT Miller. Shoot with conviction, like shoot like you mean it. I think Tyler Toffoli is a guy like that. Now, I'm not sure New Jersey, like I would imagine they still think they're in the hunt, but I don't know. I see Tyler Toffoli's name, and I think clutch goals.
Well, it would be seamless, and he was very good for the Canucks the first time around.
Been down that road once before, and of course, let's not discount Ilya Mikheyev's assist last night. He got on the score sheet, Frank.
It was a fine second assist.
Yes, it was a fine second assist.
I know. If I had a fine second assist, JPat would tweet about it.
I'm waiting for a goal. He's got to do more than just a second assist. It's been far too long since Ilya Mikheyev put a puck in the net.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to have to submit to the relentless JPat post-game question.
Yeah.
Frankie, great fun here. Thanks for this, buddy. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.